and welcome to Religion and Life. I'm your host, Ozzie Ostwalt. Not all angels have wings and halos and sing heavenly music all day long. Some of them have flesh and bones and work on earth all day long. My guest today, Elijah Yetter-Bowman, is founder of Ethereal Films and a documentary filmmaker who tells the story of one such angel, the Angel of Alabama. Welcome, Elijah, and thank you for sharing the story of the angel, Brenda Hampton, Angel of Alabama, and you're going to be screening your documentary film tonight on campus.
Yes,
correct?
Yeah. Thanks so much.
We look forward to that. Tell me, just introduce yourself briefly. You have a very interesting background, and then we'll begin to talk about your film. But an alum of UNC Chapel Hill.
Yeah, it's a great common point with a lot of folks.
Yeah.
I feel like I'm constantly trying to come up with a better term to describe what I do. There's a joke with the family. My wife will often say, I don't know how to tell my parents really what you do. You know, you make films, but I think the best way to describe it is like I try to problem solve, first and foremost. I was taught by my parents the importance of making a difference. And how that can take a lot of different shapes, and you don't always know what skills you're going to need. So it just so happens that based on a very eclectic background, both in the arts, in theater, in entertainment, and then with a long period in research and academia, I now find myself at the convergence of those points.
That's really interesting. So using art to problem solve, and that certainly is apparent in your projects so far. But you studied philosophy and chemistry as an undergraduate, is that correct?
Yeah.
And does that come through in the title of your film production company, Ethereal? That means heavenly or celestial, right, on one hand, but...
I think to be honest, it's a funny question. Where does the name even really come from? For us, it was... maybe tapping into the mystery of life and of existence a little bit, and how sometimes the best things and the best experiences, it's hard to sort of put it into words.
Right.
And so we wanted that little mystery, that enigmatic sort of title.
It's a great name. I thought maybe it was coming from your chemistry background. Ether solvent or something. But anyway, it's a great name. So how does a philosophy major or philosophy student and chemistry student come to be a filmmaker, a documentary filmmaker?
To tell you the whole story would probably take a couple of hours, but the synopsis was that I had left the arts and I had left sort of my humanities background to focus on research because when I was growing up, my mom, who had always dedicated herself to public health, sort of out of nowhere developed a really rare autoimmune disease. And that was an incredibly informative and transformative experience. She still lives with that disease. It's a lifetime illness, and there's no permanent treatment. So seeing that and seeing something so devastating happen to our family, it made me want to figure out how I could find a better solution than just take steroids for the rest of your life to mitigate symptoms. And so I thought, if I'm at Carolina and if I, become a very strong and robust pre-medical student, I can matriculate into the med program there and become a doctor to eventually cure these types of issues. But it was during that transition period where I was about to start applying, take the MCAT, and roll into a graduate program when the headlines from the town that I grew up in, Wilmington, North Carolina, were talking about chemical pollution. And so it was a very unique moment where, I wasn't living in Wilmington anymore, but I had grown up there. And I had friends back home who said, hey, Eli, I don't understand. Can you translate these articles? They're saying something about pollution in the water, and it's written in chemistry. Please translate. And so the long and short of it is, over a period of months, I did as much digging as I could. I ended up running out of the the knowledge of all of my professors. They sort of said, I don't even know, this is beyond my scope. And it occurred to me that at that point in time, maybe there was almost a universal calling saying, right now, this community needs someone who understands the science, but can translate it in a way that the people actually understand and can do something with. And so I'm condensing many, many periods of my life, but that's, in a nutshell, what directed me. What at first was a 1-year detour, and now we're 5 years in, and I'm very happy with the decision.
As I listen to you tell your story, you use words like transformation or transition period and universal calling. It sounds almost like a spiritual journey of enlightenment almost. We talk about this in our classes all the time. And I'm often kind of amazed at how people come to what they do through experiences like this. I mean, were you feeling led at the time in any sort of way, just by circumstances, I guess?
I think if I'm trying to really hone in on what was the moral or ethical or philosophical imperative, I often think back to an experience with my dad when I was really little, of how sometimes like life just throws things at you, and if you want to act justly, if you want to act as a good person, you just respond. You don't question why you're having to do this. You just fix the problem. I specifically remember one time when I was probably a whiny little kid, just excited because a new movie had come out, like a new cartoon I was excited to see, and we had gone. I distinctly remember this night because I learned something really important. So we went to get this movie, and we're running up to the VHS place. This was, older, right? Because we still had VHSs. And all I could think is like, we're gonna get the movie. I'm so excited. I'm a selfish kid, basically. I'm in that mindset. But something happened, which is a stranger, and all my stranger alarm bells are ringing. A stranger approached us as we were coming back to the car. And this was a person that we didn't recognize, we didn't know. But she just very honestly said, "Hey," talking to my dad, "I need help finding my way home. I'm supposed to be able to get a ride, but I can't figure out how to get home, and it's dark, and I just need to get to my sister's house. Can you please help me?" And I think in this day and age, a lot of people in that situation would just ignore the person. They would be worried. They would have fear for threats to themselves. But that's not how my dad responded. He just sat there and he listened to everything that she said, while I was, being a child, like, what are we doing? Why are we talking to this stranger? This is crazy.
You want to get home and watch
I want
the
to watch the movie,
right?
right? But we didn't do that. I sat in the car as my father listened to everything that she said, sat with her, heard what she needed, and said, "Okay, I'm going to make sure that you get home safe tonight." And so we sat in that parking lot for essentially 30 minutes until we could arrange a ride from a family member who could come and take her to where she needed to be. And so I was inconvenienced for maybe 35 minutes of my life. But now, and as I've developed and grown older, I see how important that moment was, of how sometimes people will come into your life, or situations will come into your life, where you have the opportunity to really make a difference, and it may not be clear why, but sometimes you just have to act upon that. And so that's the same driving force that I think I was thinking about when my friends back home said, "Are we drinking poison?
Yeah.
Why are we drinking poison? How do we deal with this?"
Yeah. You're a great storyteller. I can see why you're a filmmaker. That's a really marvelous story. And it kind of leads us to this documentary film that you're showing tonight, Angel of Alabama. It's just another one of those persons who have come into your life. Tell us a little bit about what we're going to see tonight, and then we'll watch the trailer here in a moment. But
Well, it's really hard, I think, to summarize amazing people, right, when you meet them. People themselves are so complex, but especially this person, Brenda Hampton, who actually comes from a very long history of folks fighting for human rights. She carries that lineage very deeply in her heart, and I know in her case, she's a very spiritually guided person. The work that she does is how she connects with her spirituality. It's what drives her. This woman is probably one of the most powerful people I've ever met. Even if she's a kind of small-bodied person, she is extremely energetic, despite being a great-grandmother. And really, I can't say, I've met a lot of people in this line of work who have done some amazing things, and very few would come close to this woman. So what's amazing to me is how her background, the environment that she was raised in, the state that she lives in, there are a lot of pressures stacked against her. There is a lot that goes into her background that would make it really hard to be a changer, to really cause big impacts. And it's almost like she somehow balances it the other way. She somehow flips it over and says, I don't need anybody, I'm going to make things happen. And so as our film shows, she has shown us, the creators of this film, and really the world, how even when the deck is stacked against you, even when the infrastructures you live within, your own government won't support you, you can accomplish things that would otherwise be thought impossible. She did it in this film. We feature a few examples of literally insane things. I'll give one small anecdote, which is that it was her work, her story, her effort to protect a very poor community of rural Alabama. It was her getting that message out and explaining that caused multi-billion-dollar fast food giants, including McDonald's, the biggest, without any laws being changed, without any policies being imposed. It was her story and her courage that caused McDonald's to say, okay, we're going to voluntarily change a production part of every single one of our stores. They have like 37,000 stores worldwide. Right. And they said, okay, by this date, we're never going to use these chemicals in any of our stores ever. And there were no laws. There was no policy. It was her story. And what's so incredible about that is she was able to accomplish all of that, and it caused a ripple effect. So now every single other fast food company said, oh wait, McDonald's is doing this, right? Okay, well, we're not going to do this either. So McDonald's caused Burger King and Wendy's and Starbucks and all of these places to follow from her example.
That's really amazing. You know, sometimes I think we feel overwhelmed by the world and think that one person can't make much of a difference, but here's a great example of how one person's drive really created a sea change in something as large as the fast food industry. Let's watch, I want to come back to Brenda, but let's watch the trailer here. It's about 1.5 minutes, and I think it'll give a good introduction to the film tonight.
People here in Alabama like to keep things to themselves and not speak about issues, problems.
Hey, baby. Hey. Rena Faye, I was giving them water.
A lot of people scared to speak up.
The way that they were raised, they don't question anything. Me, I question everything.
It was a big deal for Don to come out and say, do not
drink our water.
The people in this community have ingested so many chemicals that we don't even know their names.
This was a thriving area, and they're still leaching into the Tennessee River.
It was a good thing that she recognized what was going on to help so many people, because a lot of people have been dying and been in the hospital.
It really didn't have to be this way for the sake of $1. It really didn't.
God bless this woman. I'd follow her anywhere. I will always follow Brenda Hampton.
Well, that's a great introduction to what we're going to see tonight, and you can kind of feel the inspirational moment there, the power of this woman. Now, you mentioned earlier that she comes at her work, which revolves a lot around community and service, from a place of faith, and you said that's how she kind of lives her spirituality. Is she a church person? Did she grow up in the church, or is she still involved with organized religion, or is this more of a person on her own, just living out her own kind of spiritual journey?
Well, what I can speak to is, well, one, Brenda is one of the most productive and you could argue overworked people that I've ever met. But it seems like she imposes that on herself. Like she is always looking for another person to help, another problem to solve, whether that's an entire community facing unsafe drinking water, which she actually solved that, or it's as simple as, hey, our neighbor can't make it to the store, they don't have a car, can you come bring some groceries? Right. She will respond to the micro and to the macro. And so I honestly wonder this myself, does she even have time for leisure or for things like, going to church on Sunday and being involved in that? Because in many ways, she builds out communities that are struggling everywhere that she is. Mm-hmm. Like she is, what do you need? How can I help? Always trying to be selflessly focused on what can I do next. And so if anything, it feels like her embodiment of the work that she does for God is helping others. I mean, it's every single thing for her. And there's been multiple instances where because of the entities that are unhappy with what she does, because a lot of her work has involved helping people who have been harmed by selfish companies, there has been reciprocity that she has received retaliation from some of the employees of these companies. In some cases, folks have even shot guns at her.
Oh my.
And part of her journey, which really catalyzed her awareness to the environmental exposures, was that her mother was basically dying from kidney failure. This is something
exposure to these chemicals that she's.
That is what she believes. Okay. I think there's sufficient evidence to say that, without a doubt, it played a tremendous role. Mm-hmm. That's the hard part about science, is no scientist typically will say something like, this caused this. But of all the evidence that we have, and the fact that also her family and the area that she was raised in has disproportionate rates of kidney disease, and we have the background knowing that there was decades of exposure, I think it's clear enough to say, yes, this disease had a direct role from the exposures that they faced. It was her mom's kidney failure that caused her to actually return to Alabama. She had been working out of state in Massachusetts. And essentially, out of their big family of many siblings, Brenda was the best fit to potentially donate a kidney to preserve her mom's life. And she did that. She did it without question. But unfortunately now, Brenda still lives with a single kidney. And perhaps due to the exposure that she received, her remaining kidney is not doing well. So she's had a lot of close calls with her health. And it's crazy because we see each other. She's been accompanying us for a lot of screenings of this film this year. And she'll have health scares. And we're always wanting her to do better, making sure she has the best doctors. Right. What we're really trying to do is basically provide an opportunity for her to heal.
Right. Well, it sounds like that kind of inner strength comes from somewhere. It sounds like that faith plays a major role, whether she's representing any sort of religious organization or simply kind of acting on her own spiritual awareness and spiritual journey. And the focus of her work seems to be social justice, environmental justice. So it's really kind of a faith in action sort of thing. Mm-hmm. And that's a tremendous driving force.
Yes, and explicitly when asked for a lot of these events that we've been doing where we're trying to show how her story can inspire other people to act.
Right.
She's always asked, how is it that you do this? How can you wake up and do this, especially with your health in jeopardy, with all of these struggles and obstacles you have to overcome? And she explicitly says, when life is hard for her, when things are at their bleakest, when she's in the hospital trying to recover, she had a very bad exposure with COVID not too long ago. She says she turns to God and she says, if you still want me to be here and dedicate myself to this work, then I'm here for it. And amazingly, she seems healthier than ever. It doesn't make sense.
So it sounds like a remarkable woman. I hope I get to meet her someday. So I want to change the subject slightly a little bit. You're in the process. You tell stories when you're making a film. You're telling other people's stories. That's got to be a little bit tricky. I know that in religious studies, we talk about an insider-outsider phenomenon where we're trying to tell the experiences of other people and understand those experiences. Yet, how do you do that when you're not on the inside, when you're not part of that world, when you haven't had those same experiences? Is this a difficulty in filmmaking, particularly it seems with a subject like this, and how do you address those sorts of dynamics?
I think it's always it's an important consideration and a challenge for any person telling stories to first and foremost recognize what their role and attachment is with whatever the community that they're telling a story about. So especially with filmmaking, right, you're generally an outsider visiting a community. You're a visitor. And so part of what I feel is owed to that community that you're representing is to try to really sit and understand, who are these people? What is this community? What do they care about? So that we can rule out maybe inherent biases that I might bring to the table. Right. Another part of this, and when I was speaking with some students here at App State earlier today, and the question always comes up in the documentary world of, there is no way to tell a story without some degree of bias. It's just how people work. It is impossible to rule that out. And I think recognizing that fact actually can return some power and take away some of the fear of, well, I want to make sure I tell this right. I don't want to misrepresent things. We're always representing everything. Every single thing has been pushed or pulled in some direction. There's a degree of subjectivity that cannot be lost. But that's also where some of the beautiful parts of stories come from, that humanity, that imperfection, that realness. And so really I try to balance those two things of knowing, we can only tell from our experience, and at the same time we can inform ourselves, what is the community we're talking to, what is the community we're telling the story of, and who is the audience? That's to me the biggest thing. Who is this going to? What does that message need to look like to help them or to provide something for them? Right.
And so asking that question about the audience, that's part of your problem solving, to go back to how you began this interview, right? I like the fact that you admit that there's no unbiased reporting, or that there's no storytelling without bias. So in shaping the story, you're trying to produce an outcome, I guess, with the audience. Is that, it's almost like a missionary zeal in effect. Is that here? What sort of outcome are you trying to produce with this story about Brenda?
With Brenda's story, we really wanted to encapsulate and help empower this, really the microcosm that is Brenda Hampton. She's an amazing person. Right. I can't anticipate or expect every person to do quite the level that she has done, but I think what's amazing is she's shown us that it is possible, right? And that we say often representation matters, and distinctly so here. People doing things with so many odds stacked against them, being able to witness that and see that, which is another reason I love it when Brenda can be a part of the conversation, because then people can look face to face and say, oh my God, that's the woman that has done so much, and there she is right in front of me. Right. We're really not that different. It's the exact same thing. To go a little bit further into what I tried to establish Ethereal Films to do, and where we strive to be, which is a little different than I think normal media, is we only work on projects that have some beneficial purpose. So we really think of ourselves as impact media, not media just for the sake of this is fun and entertaining and I can fall asleep on a Saturday watching this on Netflix, right. But how am I watching this and growing as a person? Either to empower me to do something, or to think of something in a different way, or maybe to change my behavior, which is one of the hardest things to accomplish, I think.
Well, so your filmmaking is inspiring change. Brenda certainly has inspired others. One of the things I got from the trailer was that she's very charismatic, and that creates a kind of inspirational response from other people. So do you see that when people watch your film, do you see it having that kind of inspirational impact on viewers of the film, even if they haven't had the opportunity to meet Brenda?
I think absolutely.
That's great. Yeah. I mean, go ahead. I didn't mean to cut you off there. So, I mean, your purpose then is being fulfilled if you can see that sort of outcome.
Yeah, well, we've seen it a lot with these screenings especially, which I think sometimes can be even more impactful than just like, hey, here, go watch the thing on your own. To actually have that opportunity to then speak with either some of us, the filmmakers, or people who are closer to the logistics of how did any of this stuff happen, right? The closer that people can be connected to real change happening at that community organizing level, the more that they start to realize, oh my goodness, I am a free agent with a lot of power, but I have to be awoken to that fact, right? I mean, we really have to see it and witness it.
Right.
And there are a lot of, I would say, institutional barriers that I think hide that from people or make them feel like that's inaccessible to them.
Yeah. So you've mentioned a little bit about commercial responses with the fast food industry. They were inspired to change, McDonald's and others. Individuals are inspired to change. Do you get any kind of commitments from religious organizations in this sort of community activism? Is there a role for religious organizations in the community to work for things like social justice and environmental justice and partner with people like Brenda? Or maybe take a leading role in and of themselves? Has there been that kind of buy-in from that quarter of society?
It's such a wonderful question because it has now come across our desk a few times that this would, especially with Brenda's story, since her work really is so spiritual, and I think if we think about one of the best things that a community church can do, it's that community empowerment and uplift and really providing. We so far have not had any direct connections or really contacts with leadership at local church organizations or religious organizations to start to do that. But I think we absolutely should.
Yeah.
Because one of the things I remember most distinctly growing up in different churches with my parents is the good ones, the ones that were enjoyable and really made you feel welcome, were those community-oriented ones who said, now we want to do something. We're here to promote and help each other, right? So I think that would be a wonderful opportunity. We just haven't explored it yet.
Yeah, seems like Brenda's kind of made for it with sort of charismatic personality and her own kind of background. So what's next? Do you have future plans for films that will, again, have this sort of impact to make the world a better place in the here and now?
Yeah, so Angel of Alabama, funny enough, came out of a 5-year feature documentary that we had been working on, which I mentioned briefly was part of the catalyst for getting involved in documentaries. That's about these forever chemicals. Angel of Alabama does intersect with that issue, but we wanted it to be a distinctly separate piece because it's really a story about this incredible person.
Right.
And we met her as a part of that journey. And interestingly enough, we're about to release another shorter documentary all about basically helping the entirety of the National Fire Service. And I mean literally 1.2 million firefighters, all of which are currently serving in the United States. Because one of the things we learned and have now verified empirically this year is that since the 1970s, the protective gear that firefighters have needed to wear to do their job, their protective gear, has actually been poisoning them from these forever chemicals.
Right.
And we have all of the data, all of the evidence, as well as the support of those researchers and the International Fire Association Union, which is an organization with 360,000 firefighters enrolled, all supporting this effort. And so in January, we're about to release this film, Burned, which is a little bit of a double entendre to reflect the fact that firefighters were burned because they were not told this.
Oh. Well, we look forward to that and future work. I love the fact that you're using the documentary film genre to produce change. We're looking forward to the film tonight. So thank you again for joining us today.
Awesome. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, great. Well, that's it for Religion and Life for this week. I hope you'll join us again next week on App TV as we continue to explore the role of religion, culture, and society. Until then, this is Ozzie Ostwalt.